6 months earlier, a retired teacher from Ohio thought she was doing everything right. She had stopped drinking soda, stopped buying desserts, started walking every evening after dinner, and carefully watched every carbohydrate that went onto her plate. Friends congratulated her on the changes. Her family told her she looked healthier. Yet every morning, when she checked her blood sugar, the numbers told a completely different story. Some days they barely moved, other days they were even higher than she expected. Sitting in her doctor's office, she finally asked a question that millions of Americans are asking right now. If sugar is the problem, why am I still struggling? What happened next completely changed the way she understood diabetes. The truth is that many people spend years fighting the wrong battle. They've been told that type 2 diabetes is simply a sugar problem, so they focus all their energy on avoiding sweets, cutting back on bread, reading nutrition labels, and counting carbohydrates. And while those habits absolutely matter, they are only part of the picture. The real problem often starts much deeper, in a place most people never think about. It starts inside the cells themselves. Imagine insulin as a delivery driver carrying fuel throughout your body. That fuel is glucose. Every cell needs it to create energy. Years ago, the process worked perfectly. The driver arrived, the door opened, and the fuel was delivered. But over time, things begin to change. Poor sleep, chronic stress, excess body fat, inflammation, years of metabolic strain. Slowly, the doors stop responding the way they once did. The driver keeps arriving. The fuel is still available. But the doors become harder and harder to open. As a result, glucose remains trapped in the bloodstream instead of reaching the cells that need it. This condition is called insulin resistance, and it may be one of the most misunderstood health problems in America today. In fact, many people develop insulin resistance years before they are ever diagnosed with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. The body continues producing insulin, sometimes even more than normal, desperately trying to keep blood sugar under control. But the harder it works, the more exhausted the system becomes. Eventually, blood sugar starts rising higher and staying elevated longer. I remember speaking with a former truck driver from Texas who described it in a way I'll never forget. He said, "It feels like my body forgot how to use its own fuel." And honestly, that's one of the simplest and most accurate descriptions of insulin resistance I've ever heard. But insulin resistance is only one piece of the puzzle. There are actually other forces working quietly in the background. One of them is chronic inflammation. Unlike the inflammation you feel after an injury, this type is silent. You can't see it, you can't feel it. Yet it gradually interferes with how cells respond to insulin. Day after day, month after month, it makes the body's communication system less efficient. And then there's the liver. And this is where things become really surprising. Most people assume blood sugar only rises after eating. But your liver has the ability to release glucose into the bloodstream even while you're sleeping. Under normal conditions, that's a useful survival mechanism. It ensures your brain has a steady supply of fuel through the night. But when insulin resistance develops, the liver can become overly generous. Instead of releasing just enough glucose, it may release far more than necessary. That's why some people go to bed feeling successful and wake up frustrated by a fasting blood sugar number that makes no sense. Suddenly, the entire picture changes. The issue isn't simply what you're eating. The issue is how your body is responding. And once you understand that, something fascinating begins to happen. Researchers have identified several natural compounds that appear to support these exact metabolic pathways, not by replacing medication, not by magically curing diabetes, but by helping the body work more efficiently in the areas where it's struggling most. And the first one is probably sitting in a kitchen cabinet right now. The surprising part? Most people have been buying the wrong version of it for years without even realizing it. That spice is cinnamon. But before you rush into the kitchen, there's something important you need to know. Not all cinnamon is the same. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming every container labeled cinnamon offers the same benefits. It doesn't. And for someone planning to use it regularly, the difference matters far more than most people realize. A few years ago, a woman from Arizona told me she had been adding cinnamon to her coffee every morning for nearly a year because she heard it could help support healthy blood sugar levels. Yet she never noticed much of a difference. When we looked closer, the problem wasn't consistency. The problem was the type of cinnamon she was using. Most grocery stores sell a variety known as cassia cinnamon. It's inexpensive, widely available, and commonly used in baking. But the variety that has attracted the most attention in metabolic health research is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called true cinnamon. While both come from related trees, their chemical makeup is surprisingly different. Now here's where things become fascinating. Scientists began studying certain compounds found in Ceylon cinnamon called polyphenols. These natural plant compounds appear to interact with insulin signaling pathways inside the body. Think back to those stubborn cellular doors we talked about earlier. Researchers believe these compounds may help improve how cells respond to insulin, making it easier for glucose to move where it belongs. In simple terms, it's not about forcing the body to produce more insulin. It's about helping the body respond better to the insulin it already has. And that distinction matters. Because for many adults with insulin resistance, the issue isn't a lack of insulin. The issue is communication. The signal is being sent, but the message isn't getting through clearly. I remember a retired police officer from Florida who described his afternoon energy crashes as feeling like someone unplugged his batteries every day around 2 p.m. Despite eating what he considered healthy meals, he'd struggle with fatigue, cravings, and brain fog. What surprised him most wasn't just learning about insulin resistance. It was discovering how much blood sugar stability influences everything from energy levels to appetite and concentration. That's another reason this conversation is so important. Most people think blood sugar only affects diabetes. In reality, unstable blood sugar can affect how hungry you feel, how focused you are, how much energy you have, and even how well you sleep. But cinnamon doesn't stop there. Researchers have also observed that certain compounds in cinnamon may help slow the breakdown of carbohydrates during digestion. Why does that matter? Because when carbohydrates are broken down more gradually, glucose enters the bloodstream at a slower pace. Instead of a sharp spike followed by a crash, the body may experience a steadier response. And honestly, that's exactly what many people with insulin resistance need. Less chaos, more stability. But cinnamon alone isn't the whole story. Remember, we talked about 3 separate problems earlier. Insulin resistance was only the first. The second was chronic inflammation quietly interfering with the body's ability to function properly. And this is where the next spice enters the picture. Because what researchers discovered about inflammation may explain why some people feel like they're pushing a car uphill, no matter how hard they try to improve their blood sugar. The surprising part? The answer isn't hiding in a prescription bottle or an expensive supplement. It's been sitting on kitchen shelves around the world for centuries. And when it's paired with one simple ingredient, its effects become dramatically more interesting. That spice is turmeric. And the reason researchers have been so interested in it has very little to do with blood sugar directly. It has everything to do with inflammation. A few years ago, I spoke with a businessman from North Carolina who felt trapped in a cycle he couldn't explain. He was taking his medication, trying to eat better, and doing his best to stay active. Yet his energy remained low, his cravings stayed intense, and his blood sugar numbers seemed stubbornly resistant to change. "It's like my body is fighting against me," he said. What he didn't realize was that inflammation may have been quietly contributing to the problem. Unlike the inflammation that causes pain after an injury, chronic inflammation often operates in complete silence. There are no flashing warning signs, no dramatic symptoms. Yet over time, it can interfere with how cells communicate with insulin, making blood sugar regulation much more difficult. This is where turmeric becomes interesting. Its active compound, curcumin, has been studied extensively for its anti-inflammatory properties. Researchers believe curcumin may help reduce some of the inflammatory pathways associated with metabolic dysfunction. In simple terms, it may help calm down some of the biological noise that makes insulin resistance worse. But there's a catch. Curcumin is absorbed very poorly on its own. In fact, one of the biggest reasons people try turmeric and see little benefit is because they're missing the ingredient that helps unlock its potential: black pepper. Black pepper contains a natural compound called piperine, which can significantly improve the body's ability to absorb curcumin. That's why turmeric and black pepper are often discussed together. Separately, their impact may be limited. Together, they become much more interesting. Think of turmeric as the passenger and black pepper as the vehicle. Without the vehicle, the passenger never reaches the destination. But even cinnamon and turmeric together still leave one major problem unresolved. Remember the liver we talked about earlier? For many people with insulin resistance, the liver continues releasing excess glucose into the bloodstream during the night. That's one reason fasting blood sugar numbers can remain frustratingly high, even when someone has been extremely careful with food choices. And this is where ginger enters the conversation. A woman from Tennessee once told me her biggest frustration wasn't her daytime blood sugar. It was waking up every morning feeling exhausted before the day had even started. She assumed it was simply part of getting older, but what she later discovered was that her metabolic health was playing a much bigger role than she realized. Researchers have found that ginger contains compounds that may support glucose metabolism in several different ways. Some studies suggest it may help improve insulin sensitivity, while others indicate it may support how muscles utilize glucose for energy. What's important here isn't any single spice. It's the bigger picture. Ceylon cinnamon may help support insulin signaling. Turmeric with black pepper may help address inflammation. Ginger may help support healthy glucose metabolism and metabolic flexibility. Each one appears to target a different piece of the puzzle, and that's exactly why so many people find the topic fascinating. Because type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance are rarely caused by one problem. They're usually the result of multiple systems struggling at the same time. Now, before we finish, I want to be very clear about something. These spices are not miracle cures. They do not replace medication. They do not eliminate the need for healthy eating, movement, sleep, or medical care. Anyone taking diabetes medication should always speak with their healthcare provider before making significant changes to their routine. But what these spices represent is something many people desperately need. Hope, not false hope, practical hope. The understanding that improving metabolic health isn't always about finding one magical solution. Sometimes it's about making small, consistent choices that support the body's natural systems day after day. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. If you've been feeling frustrated because your blood sugar isn't improving as quickly as you'd like, don't assume you're failing. You may simply be missing part of the picture, because the goal isn't just eating less sugar. The goal is helping your body use energy the way it was designed to. And for millions of people, that realization changes everything. So let me ask you, which of these 3 spices do you already use most often? Cinnamon, turmeric, or ginger? Let me know in the comments below. Sometimes the simplest conversations lead to the most valuable discoveries.